Hello everybody, my name is LHttFL and welcome to the analysis video for the Long Haul to the Farlands Nether album. It took me an hour to record and 40-minute outcome for the first album. Hopefully it doesn't take as long this time. So it's time for me to do a full breakdown for why I chose the instruments, why I separated this as I did, and all that fun little information. If you happen to have not watched the first analysis video, I recommend doing so. If you've not listened to the album in full, I also recommend doing so. There will be spoilers for the story. How is there a story? I tell a story through music. And I believe that since it's not as obvious to most people, why not do an analysis video that further explains the story and share my thoughts? That way, future me can also understand what me in the past was thinking when putting this together. We start out with the Westminster Chimes, because this album is exactly an hour long. It is split into 4 parts, each 15 minutes long. If you start the album at the top of the hour, the Westminster Chimes will signify 15 minutes in the real world every time. Nothing else to add on to that other than it's the same format as what I used for the original Overworld album. For the first Long Haul to the Farlands, when I spent 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, for a few months, walking from spawn all the way to the Nether Farlands, 12.5 million blocks away. Alright, enough intro aside, let's get on to the proper analysis part. Part 5 starts slightly sad, but quickly turns happy. It is not meant to be a jarring contrast to Part 4, which allows continuous flow. One day in the future, someone's gonna listen to these 2 parts back to back, and I want to carefully lead away from the grand finale of the original album and gently guide them into this new one. From a story standpoint, this is the preparation stage of a multiplayer Nether journey. Things start out well, so this is the time for the people to gather all supplies needed and prepare to set out. We start out with just a piano here, because pianos tend to be my go-to instrument. It just sort of happened that way. I like using them, they're fun to work with, and as you can see, I have 3 different pianos. Segment 2. Two of the Journey members, quiet windows. 2 of the Journey members have an argument right at the start of the journey. It is meant to sound uncomfortable to the listener, who is just a spectator of the argument. That's why they don't really sound good together, the 2 separate pianos. They're not supposed to. Is that really what happened? That's the intended thing that happened, but no, I was kind of messing around and I figured I'll just try this. And then I'll try this and separate them. It doesn't sound too good, but it's fine because there's a story standpoint, so it's okay. Yeah, I'm not the best musician. It's a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error, a lot of how many things don't sound good. But I decided to turn this from a one-person Nether journey into a multiplayer Nether journey. So there are 3 different people, and here we are, right at the beginning. 2 of the people already have an argument. Remember what I was saying about a story? Here you go. There are times of a noticeable pause from each as they take a breath before yelling again. Hey, shut up, says the big organ that breaks up the argument. So out of the 2 people arguing, the 3rd member said, hey, enough of that, and all that fun jazz. And so that really quickly puts an end to all that stuff. With the argument over, the 3 people on the journey work together, although a little unsteady. The 3 different pianos are representative of the 3 different people in this story. When you start out on a brand new adventure that you've never gone on before, you can expect it to be a very big learning process right at the start. So that's why there's a little unsteadiness here. Something I forgot to write down in my notes, but I'm going to mention here. This whole track came from one of my oldest songs, Alpha 1.IE-X from 2019. 5 years later, I'm reusing it here. It became the main menu for the first game I released a few years back called When Bad Things Arrive. You can find it on Game Jolt. The journey through the Nether starts getting some traction. There is more tension compared to the start of an overworld journey. Added the drum kit here to provide some energy to the tension. Starting out another journey. Expect there to be tension and conflict from all the bad guys around. Here, the organ becomes the main focus as things start getting a little crazy. This is a continuation of the previous segment that started the shift. In addition to the piano being around, the organ starts coming up and being the focus. The organ represents the events that unfold as an antithesis to the pianos that represent the people on the journey. The journey takes a temporary pause to regroup. Beta gas spawning is much higher compared to modern, so because of that, they need to set up a little temporary shack as they get prepared for the next battle. When everyone is ready, it's time to head out. Chaos! Chaos is everywhere as the 3 people try to get through the ghast-infested area. During this time, there's lots of yelling and damage taken. You'll need to use your imagination for what sort of scene this would look like. But yeah, imagine while they were in the shelter, the ghasts continued to spawn, and so when they pop on out, well, we still have this problem to take care of. So they're trying to scram quickly through, leave the area. hopefully getting away from the ghast-infested area. And so that is represented by all the instruments, at least most of them we've heard up until this point, coming together. The area is cleared out and people are able to relax a little. However, not all is well. The funeral march is heard, signifying one of the three adventurers has died during the epic ghast encounter. However, it is only short-lived, because deaths in Minecraft are short. Unless you're playing hardcore mode, of course. Why did I want to include the funeral march? Well, I think it worked good for a story standpoint, and what I was trying to showcase here. But I will be honest, the initial inspiration came from Ward, the C418 music disc. In the couple of months before working on this part, I was starting to greatly appreciate the C418 music discs again. And so in listening to Ward, I've started to realize, I think this might be my third favorite record available in the game. In learning about its composition, that's when I stumbled upon the Funeral March, and so I ended up including that in here, as it helped give another point of conflict here in the story. And so now that one of them has died, there are only two people continuing on with the journey. The harp was utilized in addition to the piano to give a solid beat to it. After one of our characters' death, the journey continues on, but with high tension returning. A solid beat is provided by the bass and drum kit. This part of the Nether is mostly solid, but hazards still lie around. They got lucky with the terrain generation here in the Nether. There's an easier path to walk through after all the chaos they witnessed moments before, or perhaps even hours before. Different parts of the album represent different parts of the journey, and it's not one continuous flow, if that makes sense. Things have calmed down a little bit, and that's what the harp here signifies. However, the organ keeps tensions high. Things may be alright for the moment, but anything can happen. Unexpected ghast showing up, for example. Wanting to get a short break from all the tension, our adventurers take a short pause to regroup and plan out the next move. It also gives the listener here a little break from all the high tension stuff, and that way it's not too fatiguing. With a long piece of music like this, you need to have moments of high energy and then moments where it's calmer. Because if it's high energy the whole time, it's going to get a little tiring, and so you want to have moments where it's slower and calmer, so that way the whoever is listening to this doesn't get too tired and it doesn't seem too monotonous and too much repetition and all that stuff. I'm sure there's a term for this in music theory. I never took music theory of any point. I didn't even watch any YouTube videos. I'm kind of going based on, what seems right. Things have not returned to crazy, But the people must be high alert for anything to happen. There's a lot of tension, a lot of little things going on around. Plenty of fires, lava all over the place. We're still in the Nether. Gotta be mindful of everything that's going around. There's a short pause to plan out the next move, and it's also to give the listeners a little break, trying to avoid fatigue in listening to something so long. So that's why it's up with the energy, lower, calm, and then you go back up again. Chaos ensues. This is one final mad dash to set up a basic shelter and build a new portal. The piano works to remain calm, as the organ has high energy, supplemented by other instruments. So this is it. Time to take a quick break and head back to the overworld. The journey will continue on soon, but before they can do that, they need to build a portal, make sure it's safe, and then get through. So this is the all the ghasts shooting at them while they're trying to build a portal. By now, you might have noticed the reoccurring theme of chaos. That's kind of what I was going for with this album. I think of the Nether, and I think of trying to go through a journey, trying to get to the Farlands. Chaos everywhere, and so that's what I was trying to represent. The Overworld album was more simple and more of the general long distance journey music. This one is focused specifically on all the crazy happenings that go on while you're in the Nether. Hopefully, I portray that well. This marks a short return to the overworld. All is happy once again. But the journey back is short-lived. I wanted something peaceful, so here we are, the nice happy little motif that we heard starting out at the beginning of the album. Be prepared, it's going to make a return more in the future. Alternatively, if the Nether journey here is going across the Nether roof, you could think of this as visiting a duplicated spawn chunk. So after how many hours staring at endless bedrock, you know how nice it is to see that little hole in the ceiling, in the Nether roof, and you just boop 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 drop down the Nether skylight. I say it's nice to head back down into the Nether again and check things out. Unless your name is Sav and you die losing 3 million blocks of progress in visiting one of the duplicated spawn chunks. More on that later. Like I said at the beginning, if you started this album at the top of the hour, the 15-minute mark just went off. So here we are at the beginning of part 6. Man, that JR voice takes forever to fade away. It lasts so long, which is why I need to start it really early in regards to the other instruments that I want to play with it. Okay, tangent over. Did the two adventurers want to go back to the Nether after enjoying the peaceful overworld again? No, not really. But they already committed to going on the journey anyway. This whole part was intended to be ambience based, whereas the previous part 5, was meant to be event based. I'll also add that shortly before working on this, I heard the song Radioactivity by Kraftwerk and took some inspiration from that. It was mainly the ambience and the backgrounds that I was trying to focus on. And so if you look at the instrument list on the left, most of these are meant to be like long, just ambient sounds that you hear in the backgrounds. Bells are also utilized to be a more front and center instrument when the time comes. In sticking to the original idea for what I had for the first album was keep all 4 parts to have their own theme and their own sounds. That is why part 6 here has a very different feel to it compared to part 5 that we just listened to. It's also easier to work like this because in trying to come up with 1 hour long song, that was very hard. I couldn't pull it off well. Good thing I decided rather quickly to split it up into 15-minute segments. So 4 15-minute extended songs is a lot easier to work with than trying to think of 1 hour long song. So technically, each album is meant to be 4 separate tracks, but I will say they are intended to be listened to all the way together. Voices, whistles, and the like set the overall mood. The choir creates tension for the bad things that might occur on the journey. All the voices and bells create an air of something big happening in the near future. There's anticipation for what's to come. And I gotta say, I liked using the space voice all the way back in part 2 so much, it had to return. I'm so happy with how part 2 turned out in the original. And therefore, Space Voice made a return in that. I did use a lot of the same instruments in the original 4 parts here, but this time I wasn't limiting myself to only one sound font, plus the built-in stuff, like I was for the first album. The bells signal an abrupt end to the tension. Things are naturally still. From a story standpoint, this is when things are quiet. Too quiet. I don't know, just another point of conflict, and it's also meant to give the listener a little break from all that. Going back to what I keep saying about how don't want the listener to get fatigued from all the constant music going on, all the sounds happening, so we gotta give them a little pause. But it works good from a story standpoint and giving a little break from the tension. Every good story is up and down, up and down. Most of them are designed that way, at least. The adventurers let their guard up in the midst of the calmness that we just witnessed, but the sweet pattern choir quickly remind them of where they are. It's still the Nether. You still need to be mindful of all your surroundings and everything that might happen and all the dangers that are present. Something's not right. The choir takes an unexpected shift in presentation. The JR voice and bells add to the tension. I know I'm showcasing the music, but I'm trying not to let the music play for too long between each explanation. The choir gains momentum as a new source of conflict arises, whether it be more guests, angry pigmen, or something else. It's up for interpretation. I'll let you guys decide what sort of conflict happens on this journey. I can't plan out everything for you. That takes away some of the fun of imagining your own story unfolding. This is just a template. The space voice adds energy to the tension created by the choir. I didn't realize it at first, but as I was working on earlier, the choir sounded a little bit like some of the build-up for Godzilla's theme. And so in this part, I kind of figured, how about I just go for my own version of it? But this time, only using two different instruments. If you look up Godzilla's theme, as long as I'm thinking of the right song, and you will hear the correlation. And so I figured, we're just gonna go for it, I guess. Insert shrug emote here. Griffin knows what I'm talking about. I said it to him all the time. There's a lot happening at once here. More chaos. The beta gas spawning is doing its stuff again, not to mention the fire, lava, and pigment hazards. There's that theme of chaos. Things weren't too bad before, now they're starting to pick up again. Kind of like how in the original Overworld album, I had times of where, oh man, I could do this, things are going well. And then I had times on the journey where it's like, this journey is taking so slow. It's like that 3 p.m. slog, except think of it on a large scale, where as opposed to an 8 or 10 hour workday, it's a 900, 1,000 hour long journey. And of course, this is through the Nether, so it could be taking 13, 1,400 hours. I don't know. So far, no one has gone through the Nether, and 1.5 journeys have gone over the Nether. So we'll have real world numbers once the journey has completed. I really didn't need to use the male voice, but I gotta say, in terms of trying to get ambient sounds and like voices and whatnot, I figured, how about I just go for it? And so I'm really putting it to use here. Things calm down a bit, but there is still high tension. The bells and voices keep the energy high and unstable. Despite all the tension that persists around, there is an attempt made to get things normalized. Think of it as applying method to the madness. This is also another take on Ordinary Morning, which has sort of become my motif as a musician overall. I just like the tunes so much, and so ever since that first Population Zelenator album, it's kind of been sprinkled all throughout. And so here I am using it again, but this time using totally different instruments and sounds for it. Oh wow, lots of things happening at once. The attempt to keep the Nether journey straightforward has failed. Everything clashes together as persistent chaos. Here we are with that chaos again. With all the guests around, it is a difficult challenge to make a portal and return home. So here I am, that theme of chaos, back at it again, ruining the day of these poor adventurers, just trying to make it to the far lands. Things are able to calm down a little bit as they go through the portal. So this is the moment where they made it through, they can relax, they can finally start doing stuff. After escaping the quite literal hell they were just in, the people have returned to a joyful overworld. All is calm and quiet. It's a bright sunny day. Everything is peaceful. I wanted this section to be the polar opposite of the previous chaos leading right up to the halfway point. And so after all the craziness that's gone on before, I wanted something nice and pleasant. Here they are, back at it again, with another trip to the overworld. Everything is peaceful and happy, and they get to see green grass and a blue sky once again. Instruments start to drop out with the realization that the blissful overworld is temporary. They will need to return soon and continue with the journey. The bells end on a low note. They are only halfway there. I wanted those last couple of notes to feel heavy compared to the cheerful bells that came right before it. And in this scenario, solid terrain works fine beyond 32 million, because if you're using regular Minecraft logic, they'd be past 6.25 something million, somewhere around there. And so trying to do that in the game would put you beyond the 32 million mark. So there's no problem with them returning in this story. So they just boop made it back to the overworld, and everything's all fine and dandy. Well, everything was fine and dandy, but now they have to get back and return to the Nether. The Westminster chimes going off at the 30-minute mark showcase the halfway point of the whole album, and the halfway point to an hour. The ambience of the Nether immediately greets the pair upon their arrival. Mood and the Calliope create uneasiness. We're just gonna call it Mood because I'm pretty sure that's whatever the sound font name was. And get rid of that. I'm probably gonna have to restart. It's straight up called JR Mood, patch Mood 3. So, I don't know of any better name for it. I'd also like to add that I really like the Calliope. It first showed up for me in the Team Tree and Origins soundtrack. And so, I liked it so much then, I brought it over here. Mood, in conjunction with the organ, gives an air of tension as the journey continues. With the passing of the halfway mark well enough behind, the feeling of how slow the journey is sets in. There's more of that 3 p.m. slog right there. The threats of the Nether are looming about. However, there is no immediate threat to overcome. The Calliope leads the charge ahead, while the organ provides a backdrop. Everything speeds up as the beta gas spawning starts kicking in again. The minimal danger prior has really picked up now. This ends very messily because the people escape the ghasts, but in a very messy manner. That's up for interpretation. I'll let you figure in your own mind how that all happened. I did a similar construction back in part 3, which this is kind of a counterpart of, where I take one tune, have it slow, and then shortly after I take that same tune, but play it faster. And so I decided to use that same ideology here. If you listen to the Team Tree and Origin soundtrack, then this should sound familiar. This is a modified version of Deforestation from the Population Zelanator soundtrack. This signifies the feeling of tension after the previous gas battle easing up. There is still danger nearby, but things have calmed down. There wasn't much other than I kind of wanted to just reuse the song and incorporate it here. But I will say I'm glad I did, because it has a custom tuned organ that I really like the sound of. And so I was able to repurpose that later in the album and not just use it for this version of Deforestation. The people here are presented with the hazard of crossing a large lava lake, as no other easy available routes are available. The most recent instruments make a return to create a high energy scenario as the adventurers work to cross the lava lake without dying. Ghasts aren't the only problem in the Nether. You better believe lava certainly is. Sneaks up on you when you're not expecting it. It ends abruptly with a rush of relief for making it to the other side of the lake. Part of that comes down to I am not good with ending loops, and so I'll just slam all the keys and call it a day. Because I'm not too good with having stuff fade out, which gets a little stale, and I need enough time for fades, and I sometimes am time restricted, especially when I'm nearing the end of a segment and I need things to line up perfectly to make the 15-minute mark. So usually slamming down a bunch of notes all at once is how I kind of solve the issue. But it's okay because it's another boom surprise. Yeah, in this case it was a happy surprise that they made it to the other side of the lava lake. And also there's a short moment of peace for making it to the other side safely. The drum kit provides plenty of energy as the pair intensely focus on making it through the Nether. Ambience here represents their view of the Nether and its surroundings. Not played in the sample, but they are there. The crashing symbols represent every minor problem that sprouts up, but quickly dealt with. Important enough to mention, without adding too much to this video length that's already going to be long as it is. I was also having a lot of difficulty putting this together because ambience is so slow to start. So as you can see, I had to shift it over. I want to say it's half a note. I had to shift it over half a note forward. Y'all can't see this. I had to shift it over half a note forward to get the climax of the note to play with the beat because it did not feel good having it line up. Ambience was too slow to react. And so I had to outsmart. This is what happens when you work on a limited program. Oh well, LMMS has served me well for 5 years. How about I stick to it? The deforestation organ is used to provide a high tension but laid back feel to this part of the journey. The ambience and drum kit represent the threat still present, but by this part of the journey, the people are confident that they can make it to the quickly approaching 75% mark. After traveling this far in the journey, they start getting a little used to all the surprises that the Nether could throw at them. The journey has another chaotic moment right before the 75% mark. Everything starts out crazy with lots of guests and pigmen and other hazards, but eventually things do calm down as the people know very well by now what to do. They've gotten familiar with navigating the Nether. The deforestation organ kicks in one last time for a joyous moment for making it to the 75% mark. Yeah, there's that motif from before. Don't forget about it yet, because here it is. We haven't heard it for a while, so this is a reminder. Hey, pay attention. This tune is important. And so, they've made it. The big 75% mark. 3/4 of the journey has been completed. That means only 25% of it remain. For the people who started this at the top of the hour, the minute hand should now have reached 45 minutes. It has been 45 minutes since the start of the album. By this part of the journey, it has just become a straightforward task to accomplish. I wanted this part to have the sounds of soft and light metal songs. As such, an electric guitar from the death metal sound font is the primary instrument. It sounds the best for the type of electric guitar I was going for. A drum kit and bass accompany death metal to provide an easygoing backdrop. I didn't realize it at first, but I noticed that the opening here kind of sounds similar to Island in the Sun by Weezer. That was not supposed to happen, but it's fine. I kept going with it. I stuck to the happy little tune I made. The instruments change their pattern to one of higher tension. Even after fully understanding the nether mechanics, various journey hazards still persist. Sure, they know all their problems and everything that can happen, but that still means they can still happen. I don't know if I explained that well, but it makes sense to me. Beta gas spawning is back at it again, creating high tension for the two adventurers. This was originally in part 4, but is now played on an organ. Switching away from the hark and glockenspiel gives this new version of it an unsteady feeling as opposed to the original lighthearted version. The organ gives the feeling of something being not quite right, but the source cannot be figured out. What does that mean from a story standpoint? It's up for interpretation, but one or both of the people have the feeling of, something's not right here. As fate would have it, one of the two remaining adventurers has perished. Only one remains. This is meant to represent a fatal mistake near the end of the journey, but also a reminder of what happened to the first person who died. Things are different, but similar, which is why it's still the funeral march, however it's played on an organ this time instead of a piano. This is still Minecraft though, so the death is short-lived and over quickly. However, one person remains on this journey now. I'll need to bring this up because it was kind of interesting, but this was not based on Sav's Nether death because it did not happen at the time, and I don't know the future. However, it is pretty interesting that on here, a little after the 75% mark, someone died in the Nether, and then in the real world, a little before the 75% mark, someone died in the Nether. Although I did the math and I think it was closer to 66%, whereas this would be, well, we're at 53 minutes out of 60. The lone adventurer briefly contemplates his long-time buddy's death. This is a moment of reflection, but the tension remains high because the Nether does not mourn your loss. However, the last person absolves himself to completing the journey. The drum kit sets the stage for him to make the final push. As the last person travels to the finish line, thoughts of the journey thus far flashes through his mind. So first there's a tune from part 8, which is the one we're currently listening to earlier in it. And then we get a tune from part 7, which came before, followed by part 6, ending right at the beginning of the journey with a tune from part 5. There's a short pause between them to give time to process, as for it to not be over encumbering, because there's a lot going on here, but I wanted to spread it out and be manageable. I'll be honest, the real world reason for this is I thought it'd be a cool idea to look back at the album. And so, after his buddy's death, he thinks back to all the journey and everything that's happened to this point. And so we look back at what we saw happen shortly before, then before and after the midway point, and then closer towards the beginning of the journey. And I'll be honest, it's also because I was kind of creatively drained at this point, working on a project of this scale that requires so much creativity in terms of trying to just think about the music. I will say this is less rushed than the first album. I had more time to work on it, but it's still tiring putting together something like this. So I gotta give props to musicians who make full-length albums. But at the same time, that's a lot of little songs, so between like 15 and 20 shorter 3 to 5 minute songs. This is 15-minute exact songs that I put together. And so I will say by this point, after working on it for several weeks straight, it was pretty tiring. But I got it done on time for the April Fool's 2024. Hooray! Tension and energy are high. This is the most stressful part of the journey, the last hard part before reaching the end. And I'll need to say, I did not need to include some of the instruments here, like the electric guitar or the wah-wah guitar. I really didn't need those. But I sort of decided what instruments I wanted to use at the beginning. And so when working out each parts, I generally have an idea for the instruments I want to use, and so I load them into the project and find a place for them later. And I figured, we're just gonna go for it. So this is the only time you hear some of the instruments. But hey, I got them in here, and it made things a little more interesting. The adventurer needed a breather from all the action going on, took a break to calm down and prepare for what's next. There's also a big breather for the listener, who might start feeling fatigue. This is a good time to introduce the distorted guitar in a simple environment. I didn't want to slam the reader with harsh sounds out of nowhere. This is using the distorted guitar in a not so crazy way. I wanted to introduce the instrument before we see it in action for the big event. It's also another callback to the very beginning of the album, where the simple version of the motif that's been used throughout this one that I remind the listener of every so often. Every once in a while, the adventurer thinks back to the beginning of the journey, where it all started, entering that first portal with his two buddies. That's the story implication here. There's still a story, even if it's not as direct. Some parts are more direct than others. Goes back to what I was saying, where part 5, the first part of the album, was focused very heavily on the events, whereas the part that came after that, part 6, was focused more on the ambience of the Nether. As the guitar's tune switches to the motif of this Nether album, the person readies himself for the last push. This is getting psyched up for the final battle that's to come shortly. The distorted guitar builds tension for the final battle as it unfolds. Want a spoiler for the ending of the album? Jump ahead a little bit. Otherwise, it all comes down to this. This is the epic finale. After a journey far more challenging than traveling in the overworld, the adventure reaches the Nether Farlands. It is over. The finale is meant to be a joyous war cry as the battle comes to an end. It is also supposed to be a big reward to everyone who's listened to an hour of chaos and stuck it out to the end. And it's an even bigger reward to everyone who's made it through an hour of the Overworld album and the hour of this album. And in the future, this is also going to be the grandiose halfway mark for the intended 4 total Long Haul to the Farlands albums. So y'all better believe, sure, it's the end of the Nether album, but it's also the end of 2 hours worth of music in terms of the full experience, marking the halfway mark of Long Haul to the Farlands as a whole. I just don't have the next 2 albums done yet. All the way at the beginning of working on this album, I wanted this to be the epic ending. I was first looking at available instruments, and when I found death metal, the sound font, I knew I had to use that with the Nether album motif. And there we are, the grand finale of this. I also need to add here, because I forgot to do so earlier, that Club Mix was reused from the Population's Hellenator Team Tree and Origins OST. It provides additional energy compared to when the tune was first introduced. It adds that epic backdrop to the guitars here, the clean guitar, distorted guitar, and the bass. The Westminster chimes mark the top of the hour. As the new hour starts, where you go from here is up to you. That's it. It's the end of the Nether album. This video ended up being way more complicated than it was supposed to be. If you've been paying attention to the time down here, I did not expect it to take this long to record, but it's okay. One and done. So yeah, what comes after this? Stay tuned for the End album, in however many years it takes for me to get that one published. I haven't even started it, but I think I have an idea for where I want to go with it. Thank you all for watching. Bye.